In this presentation, we will be analyzing the role that gender has played within the straight edge movement by looking at works by Ross Henfler and Jamie L. Mullany. In Ross Henfler's book Straight Edge, Clean Living Youth, Hardcore Punk, and Social Change, Henfler writes of his experiences with the straight edge movement, while not a full participant of the movement, but rather someone who engages with its motives and members as an observer. Henfler used many methods in his research of the straight edge subculture, from face-to-face interviews to interpretation of song lyrics. He also wrote extensively of his experiences going to punk shows in his youth. In his chapter titled Girls United and Divided, Women and Straight Edge, he also referred extensively to LeBlanc's work, which was presented last week with the book Pretty and Punk. He conducted interviews in a very non-formal way. He described the interviews that he conducted with the straight edge women as presenting a new set of challenges than from what he had experienced with the men. Since he himself was a male and held the viewpoint that women were generally marginalized in the straight edge scene, he was conflicted as to how his own gender had influenced the interviewees and what stories the woman would have told if he was a woman. Interestingly, Henfler felt it was important enough to describe the violent potential his research could invoke in both the straight edge and hardcore scene, and the security and protection he felt he provided for those involved in his research and vice versa. Straight edge and hardcore venues are frequently described in his book as both aggressive and hyper-masculine spaces. Henfler also states that straight edgers recognize that straight edge means something different to each person, assuming the identity and, as with any group, individual members' level of dedication varies. However, while individuals are free to follow the philosophy in various ways, often adding their own interpretations, there is a set of fundamental values that underlies much of the movement. Before we go any further, the question, what is straight edge, should be addressed. When straight edge first hit the scene in the early 1980s, it combined the aesthetics of hardcore with values that were seen as both progressive and conservative. This was characterized by a philosophy of clean living by abstaining from alcohol, drugs, and promiscuous sex. When the straight edge movement began on the east coast of the United States in the early 1980s, many club owners were unwilling to allow underage kids into the shows, as much of the revenue from these shows was derived from the sales of alcohol. Eventually, music establishments were barred from refusing underage patrons. This led to the use of black X's on the hands of the underage punks as a sign to the club workers to not serve them alcohol. This was purportedly first done when an early hardcore band called the Teen Idols were scheduled to play a San Francisco nightclub. When the club management found out that the band members were underage, they had black X's drawn onto their hands. This symbol appealed to the band, which eventually ended up on the cover of their first EP, Minor Disturbance. The bass player for the Teen Idols was also the feature frontman of the pivotal group Minor Threat, whose songs Straight Edge and Out of Step have been played in this video. It was from these two hardcore groups that much of the ethos and iconography of the straight edge movement originated. By the end of the 1980s, straight edge also came to be closely associated with vegetarianism and physical fitness. By the beginning of the 1990s, some straight edgers took their philosophies to a completely new level and started to become extremely militant with their views. Henfler described the scene of some militant straight edgers by stating, "I also observed members of a straight edge crew parade around in packs with grim expressions, shirts off, displaying muscled, tattooed covered frames as if to intimidate their detractors and boost their tough image. Another kid's t-shirt read, 'Straight Edge, if you aren't now you will be,' over a picture of an X'd up hand holding a submachine gun. Hardly a welcoming invitation to the group." While it's clear that many straight edgers felt strongly about issues such as animal rights, alcoholism, and drug abuse, what are their views towards gender? While these tenets of clean living were seen as progressive, as the movement was characterized by rhetoric like, "We are for this ism but against that ism," what role has gender played in the straight edge movement?